evening, everyone. Welcome to the Stratford Public Schools Special Finance Budget Workshop. My name is Amy Wiltsey. I am the chair of the Finance Committee. Today is Monday, June 6th. We have a quorum, and just as a public reminder, this is a special meeting, so there will be no public forum. And we have one item on our agenda, fiscal year 2022-23 itemized estimate of expenditures. I will now welcome Ms. Mangini and Dr. Sunday to provide us with a little bit of an update before we open it up to questions.
Sure. Thank you, Mrs. Wiltsey, and thank you to the Finance Committee for joining us this evening. Short notice. We've been doing a tremendous amount of work over the last couple of weeks, and through the weekend, the Finance Committee, myself, my leadership team, we've been shuffling information and trying to make sure we make the best decisions for the Stratford Public Schools. We have received collectively as a group a tremendous amount of feedback and communication from stakeholders, not just families, but also staff members. And one of the things that we aim to do is make sure we give that ear to our constituent groups. One of the things that I would say came up quite consistently, and I think rightfully so, is this notion that the proposal as it was presented did not suggest or indicate that the resources will travel with the kids to Johnson House. Today I met with my cabinet, and through the weekend we were analyzing a series of data points, but we had a 2-hour meeting today, and I made the decision to reinstate the reading specialist position. So, you know, it's and that becomes part of the challenge, you know, with some of the fiscal limitations that we have. But I've said this very publicly to the committee, and I've said this to the board. One of the things that I have personally appreciated and I have readily recognized is that regardless of the quality of the communication, it has always had a focus on children. So you should certainly clap that up, because I think that you never wavered from that point. Our families never wavered from that point. And it makes sense from an equity standpoint to make sure that we position our schools with the right resources to do the work, particularly since the work this year has given us some early indication that things are moving in the right direction. So that's probably the most prominent change. And I wanted to share that with our stakeholders. I shared that information earlier today with the Finance Committee and the board. But at this time, we can certainly open it up for further questions.
So we will open that up to Finance Committee questions, if there are any. Mrs. Lance?
What is the salary of that position, please? Can you answer that?
Actually, the amount of money that we will be adding back with salaries and benefits is $80,000.
And to the same question, and where is that coming from?
We are at the moment taking it from the substitute account. While we're doing that with some hesitation, it's a unanimous agreement that we are willing to take that risk. We think the position is important enough to put back.
Okay. Were there any other questions for Mrs. Bedell?
Just to get a full picture, we have currently if this plan goes through, how many reading specialists, psychologists, social workers, math coaches will be at Johnson?
So right now, with the reinstatement, and I'm going to invite my colleagues to correct the accuracy of my numbers. Right now, at the surface level, Johnson House will have 3 reading specialists and 2 math specialists, correct? Or is it 1? They would maintain the current allotment.
I'm sorry.
They would maintain the current allotment in the way this is proposed right now. But I should also, again, I know we mentioned this last week, I should also remind the board and our stakeholders that we are still in the process of vetting out our alliance plan, okay, which is designed with one of the focal points centered on supporting our elementary age kids at literacy level as well as the math level.
So the math coach and the social worker position that are currently at SOTO are going over as well?
The math coach right now is not slated to go over as well. The only reinstatement is the reading position. So as of right now, at this point in time, the math position is still slated for reduction.
So, just a quick question, so that...
I'm sorry. Were you all set, Mrs. Vidal? Okay, Mr. Daly.
No, so, I want to get that number correct, though, at Johnson. Do we have one math coach there or two, currently?
And I'm going to defer to Dr. Gata. One?
We have one at Johnson now, so we're going to, okay.
Mrs. Carol Fabian and then Mrs. Lynn.
Just, Lisa, you're not. Just to clarify, though, you're saying, so right now we have one at Soto and one at Johnson House.
One math coach we're referring
Yes.
to? Yes, that's correct.
But the math coach at Soto services K-2, correct? So she goes over to Johnson House?
Not in this proposal, we're only...
But I mean, currently.
Well, currently she's at Soto.
But just who services second grade at,
Oh, second grade.
Johnson
Again,
House.
this is not my area, so I'm going to defer to Dr. Gata.
She also assists at second grade at Johnson House.
If you, for the cabinet members, if there's a question that is directly related to your department, please come up to the mic so our family members and colleagues at home can hear.
The math coach that's currently at Soto also works with the second grade at Johnson House.
so then one math coach who currently services 3rd through 6th will now be responsible for K through 6.
Yes, that's right. That's the plan.
With the greatest need.
Again, I would preface this with we have ongoing plans to support through our alliance plan. And at this point in time, I am scheduled to join the planning committee tomorrow morning at 7:30 to continue to flesh this out. But the focal point of the alliance plan around early literacy and numeracy as a bucket will not shift. The other piece that I think is worth noting is that as we enter the academic year, even though the current numbers do not suggest that resources have been deployed to the areas of the greatest need, that will be a part of our work moving forward.
Were you all set, Ms. Carol Fabian?
For now.
Okay, Mrs. Lance had the next question.
Now I have two questions. So does every elementary school K-6 have one math coach?
Yes.
So we'll be, so that even though the need is greater, and then we're going to hopefully be able to do some of the alliance one. Now, social workers and psychologists, I didn't get those numbers for Johnson.
I do have that. Social workers, there are 2, and psychologists 1. Correct, Heather? No?
Currently or proposed?
No, currently.
Currently.
Currently, yes. Two
Okay.
social workers, one psychologist.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Kupi?
I do have a follow-up question to that. Maybe somebody could give a quick summary of how the math coaches are utilized. So I know we're looking at it from a ratio standpoint, but in terms of their function, originally I thought they were working with the teachers, and then I think there were some adjustments there. So maybe if somebody could clarify that, we could get a better understanding of whether this sounds to us as fair or, sufficient for the time being.
For our needs. I'm going
Do we
to,
want-
Dr. Gator, I believe a lot of the questions we feel today will be in the area of teaching and learning. So perhaps yourself and Mr. Ruggiero might flip seats. So this way, it might just make a little bit more efficient sense. So the question by Ms. QP is, really kind of unpacking the nature of the role of our math positions.
The math coaches in all of our elementary schools work primarily with teachers and students, actually. Some of their time is with students who need tiered intervention. They demonstrate lessons in the classroom, and they also work with teachers. A good deal of our professional development is carried out, especially at the grade level, by the math coaches as well as the reading teachers.
Did that answer your question, Ms. Coupey?
So can I ask a
Yes.
follow-up? Okay, thank you. So you mentioned tiered services, right? And I think that's where I would get a little bit hung up, because I thought we saw data where there are quite a bit of students in the younger grade who are in tier 2, tier 3. So I think looking at it, from that perspective, it does seem like there would need to be more support, right?
So, in addition to the work that they do with students, they also work with the tutors that we have in the buildings. The tutors work more closely with our students in Tier 2. Obviously, Tier 1 being in the classroom. The math coaches work with the teachers in the classroom. They familiarize them with the resources. As I said, they also conduct lessons, demonstration lessons. They work with with the tutors. Once student data comes in, they identify the areas of need for our students. The tutors work primarily with students in Tier 2, and also perhaps some in Tier 3, but for the most part, the math coaches work with the Tier 3 students.
Okay, thank you.
Did you have a question, Mr. David?
Yeah, because I'm looking at the SRBI intervention numbers, sheet I have right here, and I'm counting between Soto and Johnson 110 students, and I'm counting at Lordship School, and I'll use Lordship School as an example, 19. And for the math, Tier 2 and Tier 3, 19 students at Lordship, 110 between Johnson and Soto. Can you just explain? I guess my concern is equity, and you can kind of explain that to me.
That's math only.
Yes.
That's math only, right? Math only.
Okay.
Right.
So I think to Dr. Osundi's point, at the end of the school year, we're going to look at student performance, not only here and in the district assessments, but also the state assessment as well. And the location of students. So as we know, the proposal is for dual language to move to Second Hill Lane. So we have a little bit of adjustment going on, which would require us to look at the data and where the needs are as well. In addition to that, every year we write the Title I grant. We look at buildings that have either economic need or performance in that, and so that also plays into the assignment of the Title I tutors. So there is, on an annual basis, a review of where the needs are, and then therefore where we adjust for resources.
I think, just to also extend on that, I think what is evident as we analyze this data is that we need to do a better job of deploying resources to the area of greatest need, right? And I'm certain, I think all of you are as well, that these numbers do not suggest that. So it's an intentionality and deliberate analysis of our numbers to make sure that when we have, to your point, Mr. David, 100 kids at Johnson House who have a need, it doesn't make sense that, Lordship with 19 students have a similar need. There's just too much volume, okay? And at the end of the day, we want people to be able to do the work and do it well, and we know a discrepancy in volume unintentionally creates situations where the work is done at a compromised level. But I think this also speaks broadly about the acquisition of resources. So I think it's very clear that we must continue to have the conversation as a board about where we deploy resources, and that starts with me. The good thing is that I am on the back end of my first year in the district, and I have a say in how we move forward. So we will certainly apply that lens to the work to make sure that our kids are receiving the services that they need.
Yes, Mr. Henry.
And if just maybe you can
clarify, I think I heard at our last meeting that you had said we have 2 social workers and 1 psychologist at Johnson, but we're going to be switching that to 2 psychologists and 1 social worker. So they'll get, I mean, in the sense that...
It's set up the testing load, so Johnson might have a greater testing load due to referrals, as you can see by the tiered numbers, and the psychologists can both serve as students as well as complete the testing. So we'll go from having 2 social workers and a psychologist to 2 psychologists and a social worker.
Okay. And I think we heard mention too, we're going to be adding a significant number of tutors over at Johnson. Was that part of the plan?
Dr. Gator.
I'm sorry, could you repeat your
So
question?
I think I remember at our last meeting, it was mentioned that we'll be adding a significant amount of tutors over at Johnson. Is that correct?
The number of tutors, we have some tutors that are funded by ESSER, and tutors who are Title I tutors as well. So Title I tutors are assigned by the need in a building, and so as the students from SOTO come over, if that in any way impacts the need that's in that building, then that will also be reflected. So yes, there will be probably more tutors at Johnson House than this year.
And then so based on the numbers we have here, Johnson is obviously significantly higher than other schools, other elementary schools. So it can be assumed that they will have significantly more tutors than any other elementary school?
Well, the significantly is something that I can't expound on.
Well, based on the numbers we have here, Johnson's doubled or tripled than most of the other schools.
It looks,
Yeah,
it looks that way.
I can take that. What could be comfortably assumed is that we will employ an equity-based approach to how we deploy the tutors based on need.
Okay.
What that number looks like today, I can't share that with you.
And one other question, attendance. I mean, if the kids aren't in school, they can't learn. Has anybody looked at the attendance of, say, Johnson versus the other elementary schools?
You hit on a great point. Attendance is key for us to have students in school. That's one of the things that we also participate in with the state. The state has an attendance committee that they have as well. And so getting students into our school is hugely important, and that's why the SLE, the social emotional part of our the work that we do in the district is hugely important as well, because students need to be supported, they need to feel welcome, they need to be engaged. Those are all of those things that we're really trying to reinstate. We have students who have missed school because of quarantining, because of COVID, for a number of reasons. So one of our main goals will be to get our students back in school again.
But as across the board, say for this year, and you might not know it off the top of your head, but are the attendance numbers for Johnson equivalent to other schools on a percentage level?
I don't have that information right now, but I can certainly look into that.
Okay. I mean, that might be, I know the numbers are significant, but that might, and I don't know if that's the case, but that might be a reason why some of the numbers, and it might not be, but I was just curious.
Right.
Yeah,
One last question, I guess to Mr. Ruggiero. There were some questions about the physical nature of Johnson and whether it had the ability to accommodate K through 2, K through 1. Is that, have you done, the last I saw you were going to take a look at it. I don't know.
We did. We actually went over, Kristen and Sean and Andrea, excuse me, and we went over and we looked at it. There is some work that's going to be done on the floors next year, not this summer, but next summer. And some changes, we're going to do some minor changes in the bathrooms. Everybody felt that what was there, we're going to change a couple of urinals out and some faucets to accommodate.
And is that something that's going to be paid for by the board or by the town?
Well, right now, the stuff that we're going to do, we're going to pay for.
Okay, all right, so we don't even need to
No.
talk to the town about it?
I talked to the town because the town would probably do the installation of the plumbing.
Okay, and so they're aware of it?
Yeah, I already talked to Danny.
Okay, that was it, thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Henrik, are you all set with your questions?
Yes.
Okay, Mrs. Bedell?
I just want to go back to the psychologist really quick through the chair, it might be from Ms. Borges. There is a bilingual psychologist at Johnson right now, correct? No.
Currently, the bilingual psychologist is at SODO.
Okay, that's it, on that campus.
Yes.
Will that person, that position be moved with the dual language program? Will there be shifting around for that?
So psychologists, social workers, and speech and language pathologists are all district.
Yeah.
So I move them to meet the needs.
Okay.
So one way or another, Johnson will have 2 psychologists, whether it's that psychologist or a different one, that's, we'll meet the needs that we need to. So if I needed to shift her to do a different job due to her ability to be bilingual, then we would.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Mrs. Goodby?
Thank you. Mrs. Mangini, thank you for sending over the numbers, but maybe you can kind of walk us through how to interpret the counts. At the last meeting, there were some discrepancies in how many students were going to be moving with dual language, how many were going to come from K through 1, and how we're going to fit all of that into Johnson House. So I don't know, maybe if you could just walk us through how we arrive at these numbers, how to interpret what you sent to us.
Absolutely. Just want to grab all my cheat sheets here, if you'll bear with me a moment. With regard to the number of dual language students, there will be 178 students that will be moving to Second Hill Lane.
How many from Johnson House specifically? Do we have that
Johnson
number?
House will be 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade, so I'll do the math real quickly. It's 102. And we ran a projection, last week we ran it again today, and we anticipate Johnson going to approximately 544 students. They currently have 560. And of course, that's dependent on the kindergarten registrations over the summer. But right now we do have quite a few registered at Johnson. In addition, Second Hill Lane will go from 560 to approximately 615 with the dual language. Was there other numbers that you were looking for, Denise? I'm sorry, I don't want to miss anything.
Yes, thank you. So again, let me just say, when I ask my questions, they're not, I know I've been talking a lot about Johnson House and SODO. I don't want you to think I'm stuck on just one school, because when I look at the data, I think about it in the larger perspective. So as we're talking about cuts and we're increasing the Second Hill Lane population, we should be discussing the resources there as well. We're talking about pulling from here and making adjustments, but we should make sure we're considering that. So maybe somebody could talk a little bit about how we're going to staff and accommodate that increase.
Again, perhaps Dr. Gata can, or Ms. Borges.
I think that fits in perfectly well with the Alliance plan that we're working on, looking at the early literacy and numeracy needs that we have throughout the district. So the Alliance plan really is looking at us as a district. But in addition to that, as I said before, looking at the resources we currently have to make sure that they're allocated in the places that they're needed. So there would be a district-wide review.
And you think that the students who are going to be moving there come September, that we have in place enough support for that increase?
I could take that. Yeah, we do. And if you remember from the April board meeting, both Denise Massari, Principal Dan Hicks, and Heather Borges, they've been working on this for some time. And the proposal would not have been made if the corresponding personnel needs were not vetted out. So, I see Heather Borges here right now. If you don't mind, if you would like to contribute to this, but the preliminary needs around staffing, tight student needs are vetted out well in advance.
So by making these shifts, Second Hill Lane goes from 34% students with exceptionalities down to 19%. So that's a big shift for them. So we will keep them status quo with their special education staff that is in that building, but they will be able to more adequately meet those needs because they're moving from 34% down to 19%. And again, we always look at special education hours to make sure that we are okay.
Can I ask a
Yes.
So from 38, you said?
34%
34
down to 19.
19. Where are they going?
Soda.
So they're all pre-K?
The integrated preschool,
I see,
509.
okay, got it, okay, thank you.
And if you all recall, on average, at the district level, we average about 16% in terms of our students with IEPs. And largely across our 13 buildings, that number hovers plus or minus 2 or 3%. The disproportionality has existed because of our specialized program at Second Hill Lane in this response to that.
If I may, Ms. Mangini, just to be clear, when Ms. Cupie asked the question about the numbers, currently 560, next year's projection for Johnson's 544, so down 16 students?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Does
Projected.
Projected.
Projected, right.
does that include the incoming kindergarten?
It includes all the
graders.
registrations we have to date.
Okay, are there any other questions for any of our administrators? Ms. Carol Fabian?
I know we talked about, to kind of go back to Denise's point, right, with Second Hill Lane. We are moving the preschool out, which will bring down our special education percentage, but we are moving 6, correct me if I'm wrong, 6 dual language classes over?
Actually, it's a total of 10.
10.
Out of Johnson House.
Johnson House.
I'm sorry, just Johnson.
No, just total with both.
10 classes.
So 10 classes are going over.
Correct.
Question then, I guess. In preschool, through our preschool program, do they access like our art, music, PE, library, all those specialists?
Not currently, but Ms. Burgess can definitely expound on that.
Over the years, that's been a little bit inconsistent. So in some buildings, when our specialists had a period that was extra, they would maybe get to go to library or things along those lines. But in order for us to do that on a more stable basis, we do that through grants and possibly having people come in to have that access with the ability to have an art and a PE room. Then we get to look at that schedule and see if we have available teachers with FTEs that could rotate in to expose our preschoolers and enrich them.
Okay. So I guess that's going to go to my next question about FTE at Second Hill Lane.
Mm-hmm.
Is there going to be enough FTE in those special areas to cover 10 additional classes?
So again, when Denise and Mr. Hicks presented, they had already gone through and looked at that, and yes, they had enough. That was presented way back.
Scheduling wise?
So the volume of numbers that you're citing, Ms. Carol Fabian, makes sense, but keep in mind there's also a population of kiddos who are leaving Second Hill Lane. And with the addition that's coming in, there's going to be some level of offset. But inherently, from an FTE standpoint, Second Hill Lane is adequately staffed to meet those needs.
Thank you. We good?
It's all good questions.
Great questions. And I thank you all for the time and the calls and the questions, the answered emails. It was a lot. So I will entertain a motion at this point to accept the itemized estimate of expenditures for this year's presented budget due to the elimination, I would say, of our projected funding and with the amendment to reinstate our 1.0 full-time FTE reading teacher as stated by Dr. Sunday.
And favorable recommendation to the Board of Education.
In favorable recommendation to the Board of Education.
So moved,
Yes.
Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. David. Do I have a second? Mrs. Lance, thank you. And we will do this by roll call vote. Mr. Henrik?
Yes.
Ms. Bedell?
No.
Mr. Kennedy? Ms. Corcoran?
Yes.
Ms. Carol Fabian?
No.
Mrs. Lance?
Yes.
Mr. David?
Yes.
Ms. Cupie?
No.
And chair votes yes. So So it passes 6-3. Thank you all
Motion to
very
adjourn.
much. Motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
Meeting adjourned at 7 p.m. Thank you very much.
And we will reconvene in 5 minutes for the special board meeting.